My name is Isabella Morgan, and this is the story of how a single page in a contract became the most expensive oversight in corporate history. The phone slipped from my fingers and shattered on the cold marble floor of my office. The cracked screen still displayed the email that would change everything. Your $4.5 million pension has been terminated. Just 48 hours before I was supposed to receive the money I'd accumulated over 23 years. But CEO Marcus Whitfield didn't know that 15 years ago, during a thunderstorm that knocked out half of Manhattan's power grid. I had planted a time bomb on page 47 of a contract he signed without reading. That Wednesday morning started like any other. I arrived at Vertex Capital Corporation's headquarters at 6:30 a.m., as I had for the past 2 decades. The security guard nodded his usual greeting. The elevator hummed its familiar tune, and my corner office welcomed me with its view of the Hudson River. I was reviewing quarterly risk assessments when the email arrived at 7:02 a.m. The subject line was clinical. Notice of benefit suspension. No greeting, no explanation. Just one sentence that felt like a knife between my ribs. I read it 3 times, each word becoming sharper than the last. My hands didn't shake. They went completely still, the way they did when I was calculating derivatives during the 2008 crash. What caught my attention wasn't just the message itself, but a small detail in the CC line. Someone had copied the email to an address ending in @SEC.gov, the Securities and Exchange Commission. My pulse quickened. Why would HR copy the federal regulators on an internal pension matter? I picked up my phone from the floor, grateful that despite the spider web of cracks across the screen, it still functioned. My first call was to Rebecca Stone, the only lawyer I trusted with my life and, more importantly, my money. She picked up on the second ring. Isabella, it's early, even for you. They terminated my pension 2 days before payout. The silence on her end lasted exactly 3 seconds. Rebecca never needed more time than that to process catastrophe. Forward me everything. Don't respond to anyone. Don't sign anything. Can you come to my office at noon? I have a video call with HR at 9:30. Perfect. Record it if you can. New York is a one-party consent state. After hanging up, I sat in my leather chair and stared at the city waking up below. 23 years. I'd given Vertex Capital my 20s, my 30s, and half my 40s. I'd missed Sarah's first steps because I was in Tokyo negotiating credit swaps. I'd spent our 10th anniversary in a conference room eating cold Chinese food while preventing a margin call that would have destroyed the firm. The memory of 2008 hit me like a physical force. September 16th. The day after Lehman Brothers collapsed. Our trading floor looked like a battlefield. Monitors flashed red, phones rang endlessly, and grown men sat with their heads in their hands. Marcus Whitfield, then a senior vice president, had grabbed my arm so hard he left bruises. Morgan, you're the only one who understands these derivatives. If we don't find a solution by market open, we're finished. I worked for 96 hours straight. Not the exaggerated, I barely slept that people claim, but literally 96 consecutive hours, fueled by espresso and determination. I redesigned our entire portfolio, created new hedging strategies that the firm still use today, and personally called every major creditor to renegotiate terms. When the Federal Reserve finally agreed to extend our emergency credit line, it was because I had presented them with a risk model so elegant, so mathematically beautiful, that their chief economist asked for a copy to teach at Princeton. Marcus got a $50 million bonus that year. I got a plaque, but I also got something else. During those chaotic months after the crisis, when everyone was focused on survival, I was tasked with rewriting our governance documents. Marcus wanted to ensure that nothing could threaten his control again. He gave me carte blanche to draft whatever provisions I deemed necessary, trusting that my loyalty was absolute. Trust. Such a fragile thing. My daughter Sarah knocked on my office door. Already dressed for school in her Riverside prep uniform, at 16, she had developed the uncanny ability to read my moods from across a room. "Mom, you okay? You didn't come down for breakfast." I forced a smile. Just a work thing, sweetheart. Nothing to worry about. She didn't believe me. But she also knew better than to push. That was my fault. I'd taught her that Morgan women handled their problems privately, efficiently, and with devastating precision. After she left, I opened my laptop and began documenting everything. Times, dates, communications. My risk management training had taught me that data was ammunition, and I was about to need all the firepower I could gather. At 9:25 a.m., I tested my recording software, adjusted my camera angle, and prepared for war. The video call connected exactly at 9:30, revealing Jason Miller, Vertex's HR director. He couldn't have been older than 32, with the kind of aggressive enthusiasm that came from reading too many leadership books and not enough history. "Isabella, thank you for making time this morning," he began, his voice dripping with manufactured empathy. "I want to assure you that this decision wasn't made lightly." "Which decision, specifically?" I kept my tone neutral, professional. Let him hang himself with his own words. "The temporary suspension of certain legacy pension obligations. It's part of a broader cash flow optimization strategy." Cash flow optimization. They'd focus grouped that phrase, I was certain. Some consultant had probably charged 6 figures to come up with a way to say, "We're stealing your money," that sounded fiscally responsible. I see, and this optimization requires no notice, no board approval. Jason shifted uncomfortably. Market conditions demanded swift action. I'm sure someone with your experience understands that sometimes difficult decisions must be made for the greater good of the firm. The greater good. I wondered if he knew that Marcus had used those exact words when he laid off 300 support staff while simultaneously renovating his office with Italian marble. "I understand perfectly," I said. "Please send me all documentation related to this decision, board minutes, financial projections, legal review. I'm sure someone with your position understands the importance of transparency." His plastic smile cracked slightly. "Of course, I'll have those to you by end of day." We both knew he was lying, but I needed him to lie in writing. "Thank you. Jason, one more question. Why was the SEC copied on the termination notice?" The color drained from his face. That must be an error, a technical glitch in our email system." "Interesting. Our email system glitches in a way that accidentally adds federal regulators." "I'll look into it immediately." "Please do. And Jason, make sure your investigation is thorough. The SEC tends to be curious about technical glitches that involve pension funds." I ended the call before he could respond, then saved the recording in 3 different locations. My hands were steady now, my mind clear. They'd made a crucial error. They'd assumed I would accept this quietly, perhaps negotiate for a smaller settlement, maybe threaten a lawsuit they could drag out for years. They didn't know about page 47. I stood and walked to my closet, where behind spare shoes and emergency dry cleaning sat a filing box I hadn't opened in 15 years. The label read, "Post-Crisis Docs," in my own careful handwriting. Inside, wrapped in red legal tape like a gift I'd given to my future self, was Amendment 7 to Vertex Capital's corporate bylaws. I cut the tape with surgical precision and lifted out the bound document. It smelled of old paper and possibility. Flipping past the standard boilerplate, past the sections on board composition and voting rights, I found what I was looking for on page 35. There it was, Marcus Whitfield's signature, bold and unmistakable, with his characteristic flourish on the W. But more importantly, his initials appeared on every page, including page 47. He'd confirmed, in writing, that he'd read and understood every provision. Page 47 itself was a masterpiece of legal engineering hidden in plain sight. Buried between a mundane section on audit requirements and another on fiscal year definitions was Section 17.3.2, Pension Security and Equity Conversion Rights. My fingers traced the words I'd written during those sleep-deprived nights in 2009, when I'd realized that loyalty without leverage was just another word for servitude. In the event that any deferred compensation or pension obligation, once contractually committed and vested, is unilaterally revoked, suspended, or otherwise terminated by the corporation, without the express written consent of the beneficiary. An automatic equity conversion shall be triggered. The affected party shall receive, via immediate transfer from the corporate reserve pool held in escrow by Meridian Trust, voting shares equivalent to 12% of outstanding common stock. This provision shall be self-executing and shall not require board approval, as the board hereby pre-approves such transfers by ratifying this amendment. But that wasn't all. In subsection B, written in the kind of dense legalese that makes even lawyers' eyes glaze over, was the real poison pill. Furthermore, any executive who authorizes such pension revocation while serving as a corporate officer shall be personally liable for any corporate debt secured by personal guarantee, with such liability becoming immediately due and payable upon the triggering of the equity conversion described above. I photographed every page, then called Rebecca. "I'm looking at it now," she said after I'd sent her the images. "Isabella, this is brilliant and terrifying. You wrote this, every word." And Marcus signed it. Initialed every page. I made sure of that. "Do you know what this means? If we activate this clause, you don't just get compensation, you become the largest individual shareholder, and Marcus becomes personally liable for the corporate credit line, which, if I remember correctly, is secured by his real estate holdings." Rebecca laughed, a sharp sound like breaking glass. "The main credit facility with Silverstone Financial. That's $200 million secured by his Manhattan townhouse, the Hamptons estate, and the Aspen property. Plus the yacht," I added. He was very proud of adding that as collateral. Said it showed his confidence in the company. Can they fight this? They can try, but the provision is clear. It was properly ratified. And most importantly, it's held in escrow by Meridian Trust. That means it's not even in Vertex's control. The moment I notify Meridian of the pension termination, the transfer executes automatically. How fast? Meridian modernized their systems last year. Full digital processing. If we file by 5 p.m., the shares transfer overnight. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "You've been waiting for this." "No," I corrected. "I've been prepared for this. There's a difference." That afternoon, I met Rebecca at her office in the Chrysler Building. The Art Deco lobby felt appropriate somehow, a reminder of an era when buildings and contracts were built to last. Her conference room overlooked 42nd Street, and I watched the crowds below while she prepared the notification documents. "I need you to be certain," she said, sliding the papers across the mahogany table. "Once we send this to Meridian Trust, there's no going back. You'll own 12% of Vertex Capital by morning. What's the current market cap?" "As of noon today, $3.2 billion US." I did the math automatically. My stake would be worth $384 million at current prices. But that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that 12% would make me the largest individual shareholder, with enough votes to demand board seats, call special meetings, and most importantly, block any major corporate actions. And Marcus, the moment the shares transfer, Silverstone's covenant triggers, personal guarantees become immediately callable. If he can't cover the $200 million, and I'm betting he can't without liquidating everything they'll move to seize assets within 48 hours. I picked up the pen. It was heavy. Silver. Probably worth more than most people's cars. But in that moment, it felt as light as a feather. "He signed every page," I said quietly. He had his lawyers review it. He had every opportunity to read page 47, but he didn't. No. He trusted me to protect his interests, and I did, for 15 years, right up until he decided my interests didn't matter. I signed my name with the same precision I'd used for every document in my career. Rebecca notarized it, scanned it, and at exactly 4:47 p.m. sent the notification to Meridian Trust. "It's done," she said. I felt nothing, no satisfaction, no regret. Just the cold clarity that comes from executing a plan long in the making. That night, I didn't sleep, not from anxiety, but from the need to monitor everything. I sat in my home office, laptop open to multiple screens, Meridian Trust's portal, Vertex's after-hours trading data, financial news sites, and my secure email. David, my husband of 18 years, brought me tea at midnight, an emergency physician at Mount Sinai. He understood vigils. He'd spent enough nights waiting for test results, watching monitors, hoping for the best while preparing for the worst. "Sarah's worried," he said, setting the cup on a coaster. "She shouldn't be. She's your daughter. Worry is genetic." He placed a hand on my shoulder. "Want to tell me what's happening?" I showed him the email, the contract, the notification to Meridian. He read everything twice, his clinical mind processing each detail. "Jesus, Bella, this is necessary." I was going to say brilliant, terrifying, but brilliant. He squeezed my shoulder. "What do you need from me?" "Just this. Just be here. Always." At 2:15 a.m., the first domino fell. An automated email from Meridian Trust. "Transfer initiated. Processing begun for equity conversion per Amendment 7 Section 17.3.2. At 3:47 a.m., the second corporate reserve shares allocated, awaiting final verification. At 5:23 a.m., the killing blow. Transfer complete. 12.06% of Vertex Capital. Common shares now registered to Isabella E. Morgan, voting rights active immediately. I stared at the screen, feeling the weight of what I'd just become, the largest individual shareholder in a company I'd helped build, helped save, and now might help destroy. My phone buzzed, a text from Elena Rodriguez, former board chair, forced out by Marcus 2 years ago. "Saw the filing alert. I'm with you, whatever you need." Another from Thomas Washington. The CFO Marcus had marginalized. About time someone held him accountable. Count on my support. By 6 a.m., I had messages from 7 current and former board members. The coup Marcus had thought complete was revealing its cracks. I finally stood, stretching muscles that had been locked in place for hours. Outside, New York was waking up, unaware that the power structure of one of its major financial firms had shifted overnight. In 8 hours, I would walk into Vertex Capital not as an employee, but as its largest shareholder. Marcus would know by now. The automatic SEC filing would have triggered alerts to all senior executives. I wondered if he'd slept. I wondered if he'd finally read page 47. I hoped he had. I hoped he understood that every word had been crafted for this moment, planted like seeds in the dark soil of 2009, waiting for the perfect conditions to bloom. The phone rang. Rebecca. Silverstone Financial just called my office. They're requesting an emergency meeting about Marcus's personal guarantees. Apparently, someone tipped them off about the ownership change. Someone, my paralegal might have accidentally copied them on the SEC filing notification. How careless of her. Isn't it? They're panicking. If Marcus can't cover the guarantee, they're exposed for $200 million. When do they want to meet? Today, 2 p.m., they're bringing their entire credit committee. I'll be there. Isabella, are you sure you want to do this? You've already won. The shares are yours. You could negotiate a settlement now. Take your victory and walk away. I thought about the email. The casual cruelty of stealing 23 years of deferred compensation with a single click. The assumption that I would accept it, that I had no recourse, that I was just another aging employee to be discarded when convenient. Rebecca, do you know what I did after the 2008 crisis, after I saved Vertex? You got a plaque. I got a plaque, and I watched Marcus give himself a $50 million bonus while laying off the security guards who'd worked there for 30 years. I watched him cut the pension contributions for everyone below senior VP level. I watched him turn a firm built on relationships into a machine designed to extract maximum value from human capital. So this is revenge. No, this is justice. With compound interest. Thursday arrived gray and humid. The kind of New York morning that promised thunderstorms by afternoon, fitting weather for what was about to unfold. I dressed carefully, not the severe black suit of my risk management days, but a deep navy dress that conveyed authority without aggression, the kind of outfit that said I was no longer trying to fit into their world because I now owned a significant piece of it. The Vertex Capitol building loomed against the clouded sky, its glass facade reflecting distorted images of the city. I'd walked through those doors thousands of times as an employee. This was my first as an owner. The security guard did a double take when I approached. Word traveled fast in buildings like this. Ms. Morgan, good morning. Do you need my usual elevator? Thanks, Robert. I smiled at him. The same man who'd been kind to Sarah when she was young and I'd had to bring her to the office during school breaks. How's your grandson? Starting college in the fall. Pre-med at Columbia. Wonderful. Give my best to your family. The executive elevator recognized my keycard and whisked me to the 40th floor without stopping. When the doors opened, I found chaos. The normally serene executive reception area buzzed with frantic energy. Assistants huddled in corners whispering, senior managers paced while barking into phones, and through the glass walls of the main conference room, I could see the board gathering for an emergency session. Marcus's assistant, a competent woman named Patricia, who'd weathered 5 years of his mercurial moods, appeared at my elbow. Ms. Morgan, Mr. Whitfield would like to see you in his office, privately. I'm sure he would. He said it's urgent. Everything's urgent when you're drowning. Patricia, I checked my watch. Tell him I have 10 minutes. Marcus's office occupied the southwest corner of the floor, a temple to executive excess, Italian marble floors, custom furniture that cost more than most annual salaries, and a view that stretched to the Statue of Liberty. He'd redesigned it 3 times in the past 5 years, each iteration more ostentatious than the last. He stood when I entered, and I saw immediately that he hadn't slept. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his $5,000 suit wrinkled, and his hands trembled slightly as he gestured to a chair. Isabella, thank you for coming. Please, sit. I remained standing. You have 9 minutes. He tried his trademark smile, the one that had charmed board members and intimidated subordinates for 2 decades. It looked like a grimace now. This is all a misunderstanding. The pension situation. It was never meant to be permanent. Just a temporary cash flow adjustment while we navigate some market volatility. Market volatility. I let the words hang between us. Is that what you're calling it? Look, I know you're upset. You have every right to be. But what you've done, this share grab, it's going to destroy the firm. Is that really what you want? To burn down everything we've built? I laughed, short and sharp. When was it ever we, Marcus? When you took credit for my risk models, when you collected bonuses based on my strategies, when you stood in front of the board and presented my work as your own. That's how business works. You know that. The senior people sign contracts, and sometimes they should read them. His face flushed. This is about page 47. I know about the clause. Isabella, my lawyers are already preparing to challenge it. No court will uphold such a draconian provision. I pulled out my phone and placed it on his desk, then pressed play. His own voice filled the room, recorded during a 2009 board meeting I'd attended. I've reviewed every page of Amendment 7 personally. Every provision has my full support. Ms. Morgan has crafted exactly what we need to protect the firm's interests going forward. I stopped the recording. You were very enthusiastic about my work back then. The color drained from his face. You recorded that. I record everything. Marcus, it's part of risk management. You taught me that. He sat heavily in his chair, the leather creaking under his weight. For a moment, he looked every one of his 58 years. What do you want? I wanted my pension, the money I earned, that I was promised, that I structured my entire life around, but you took that away with an email. We can restore it. Full amount, plus interest. I'll have the papers drawn up today. It's too late for that. Then what? You want my job? The board will never. I don't want your job, Marcus. I want you to understand what it feels like to have everything you've worked for stripped away in an instant, to realize that your future, your security, your carefully laid plans mean nothing to someone with more power. His desk phone buzzed. Patricia's voice. Strained. Mr. Whitfield, Silverstone Financial is here. They say it's urgent. I saw the moment he understood. His personal guarantees, the houses, the yacht, the art collection he was so proud of, all of it pledged against corporate debt that was now being called. You did this, he whispered. No, Marcus, you did this when you signed page 47 without reading it, when you assumed I would always be loyal without giving me a reason to be, when you thought you could take what was mine without consequences. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. Your 9 minutes are up. I believe you have bankers to meet. The hallway outside his office had filled with more people. Word was spreading through the building like wildfire. Vertex Capital's largest individual shareholder was in the building, and everything was about to change. I made my way to the boardroom, where through the glass I could see directors arranging themselves around the polished table. Some looked panicked, others resigned, a few almost pleased. Elena Rodriguez caught my eye and nodded slightly. My phone vibrated. Sarah, texting from school. Mom, your company is all over Bloomberg. Are you okay? I typed back. Better than okay. Home for dinner. Love you. Another text. This one from Rebecca. Silverstone just seized Marcus's accounts, moving fast on the properties. He's trying to negotiate, but they're not interested. Too much exposure. Through the boardroom glass, I watched Marcus enter from the other side, flanked by lawyers. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. When our eyes met, I saw something I'd never seen before: fear. Good. He should be afraid. Not of me, but of what happens when hubris meets hidden clauses, when assumptions meet amendments, when power meets patience. The boardroom doors opened, and Catherine Hayes, the CFO, stepped out. Ms. Morgan, the board is ready to see you now. I straightened my shoulders, thought of every late night, every missed birthday, every sacrifice I'd made for this firm. Then I thought of page 47 waiting all these years like a patient predator. Thank you. Catherine, let's begin. The boardroom at Vertex Capital had been designed to intimidate. A massive oval table dominated the space, surrounded by leather chairs that cost more than most cars. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, reminding everyone present of the power concentrated in this room. Today, that power had shifted. I entered to find 13 board members already seated, with Marcus at the head of the table in his traditional spot. General counsel, outside lawyers, and various executives lined the walls. The air crackled with tension thick enough to taste. Ms. Morgan, the lead independent director, Harrison Wells, stood as I approached. Thank you for joining us. Please, take a seat. I remained standing. I'll present from here, if you don't mind. A ripple of unease passed through the room. Breaking protocol already. Good. As of 5:23 a.m. this morning, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the space. I became the largest individual shareholder of Vertex Capital, holding 12.06% of outstanding common shares. This transfer was executed automatically pursuant to Section 17.3.2 of Amendment 7 to the corporate bylaws, triggered by the unilateral termination of my vested pension benefits. This is highly irregular, interrupted Gerald Thornton, Marcus's most loyal board ally. Surely there must be— What's irregular, Mr. Thornton, is terminating a contractually guaranteed pension 2 days before disbursement. What's irregular is thinking there would be no consequences. I pulled out a small remote and clicked. The main screen illuminated with the signature page from Amendment 7, Marcus's bold signature prominently displayed. Every member of this board voted to approve Amendment 7 in 2009. The provision is clear, unambiguous, and self-executing. There's nothing to debate. But surely the intent— Thornton tried again. The intent is irrelevant. The language is what matters. And the language, which Mr. Whitfield personally reviewed and endorsed, is quite specific. Elena Rodriguez leaned forward. What are your intentions regarding your stake? Ms. Morgan. Before I could answer, The doors burst open. 3 representatives from Silverstone Financial entered, their faces grim. "Apologies for the interruption," the lead banker announced. "We need to speak with Mr. Whitfield immediately regarding his personal guarantees." Marcus stood, his face flushed. "This is a board meeting. You can't just—" "Actually, we can. The covenant in your guarantee allows us immediate access in the event of a material adverse change. A shift in ownership of this magnitude qualifies." The banker turned to the board. "Silverstone Financial is hereby notifying Vertex Capital that we are calling Mr. Whitfield's $200 million personal guarantee. If he cannot satisfy this obligation within 48 hours, we will begin asset seizure." The room erupted. Board members shouted questions. Lawyers huddled in frantic consultation. And through it all, Marcus stood frozen, his empire crumbling in real time. Harrison Wells banged a crystal paperweight on the table like a gavel. "Order, we need order." He turned to me. "Ms. Morgan, clearly your actions have created a crisis. What exactly do you want?" I clicked the remote again. A new slide appeared. Proposed governance changes. First, the immediate restoration of all suspended pension benefits, with 12% interest compounded daily from the date of suspension. The cost, someone started, is approximately $47 million across all affected retirees, a rounding error compared to executive bonuses paid last year. Second, the resignation of Marcus Whitfield as CEO. Effective immediately, Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "You can't. I can call a special shareholder meeting with 10% ownership. I have 12%. Would you prefer a public vote of no confidence or a dignified exit?" His lawyers whispered urgently in his ear. The Silverstone representatives stood like vultures, waiting. "Third," I continued, "the appointment of Catherine Hayes as interim CEO, with a mandate to conduct a full forensic audit of all executive compensation and pension decisions over the past 5 years. Catherine, who had been silent until now, straightened in her chair. I'd chosen her carefully. Competent, ethical, and marginalized by Marcus despite her superior performance. Fourth, the establishment of an employee protection fund, seeded with $100 million from the executive bonus pool, to ensure no retirement benefits are ever arbitrarily terminated again. This is extortion." Gerald Thornton stood, his face purple with rage. "No, Mr. Thornton. Extortion is telling a 42-year-old woman who saved your company that her legally guaranteed pension is being stolen to optimize cash flow. This is consequence." Elena Rodriguez raised her hand. "I move to accept all of Miss Morgan's proposals." "Seconded," added Thomas Washington immediately. "Discussion," Harrison Wells asked weakly. "I'd like to discuss the Silverstone situation," another director interjected. "If Marcus can't cover his guarantee, what's our exposure?" The lead Silverstone banker cleared his throat. "The guarantee is personal to Mr. Whitfield. However, if he defaults, we'll need to review all of Vertex's credit facilities, the reputational damage alone." The implied threat hung in the air. A CEO defaulting on personal guarantees would trigger every credit agreement the firm had. The stock price would crater, clients would flee. Marcus seemed to shrink into his chair as the full scope of his situation became clear. By trying to steal my pension to shore up cash flow, he'd triggered a provision that would cost him everything. "Perhaps," Harrison Wells said slowly, "we should vote on Ms. Morgan's proposals." The vote was swift and brutal, with Marcus abstaining and Gerald Thornton the sole dissent. Every proposal passed. In 10 minutes, Marcus went from CEO to pariah, from billionaire to potentially bankrupt. "Motion to adjourn," Elena said quickly. "Seconded." As board members filed out, carefully avoiding eye contact with Marcus, I remained standing in the same spot. Catherine Hayes approached me. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Because you're competent, because you're ethical, and because you've never forgotten that this firm exists to serve its clients and employees, not just its executives." She nodded slowly. "I won't let you down. I know." The Silverstone bankers were escorting Marcus out now. presumably to discuss exactly how he would come up with $200 million in 48 hours. As he passed, he stopped. "This won't end here," he said, his voice low and desperate. "My lawyers will challenge every aspect of this. You've destroyed everything." "I destroyed nothing, Marcus. I simply collected what was owed, with interest." He searched my face, looking for something mercy, perhaps, or regret. He found neither. After he left, the boardroom slowly emptied until only Elena Rodriguez and I remained. "That was masterful," she said. 15 years of planning for this moment. I prefer to think of it as 15 years of preparation. I never wanted to use that clause. Elena. I inserted it, hoping it would never be triggered. "But you knew someday it might be." I nodded. "Marcus taught me well. Always have a hedge. Always protect your position. He just never realized I'd learned to protect myself from him." Elena smiled. The first genuine expression I'd seen all day. "What will you do now with your shares? You could push for a board seat, maybe even chair." "I'll remain a shareholder, vote my conscience, ensure Catherine has the support she needs, but I won't seek a formal role." "Why not?" "You've earned it." I thought about Sarah, about David, about the retirement we'd postponed, the vacations we'd canceled, the life we'd put on hold for a company that had tried to discard me like obsolete equipment. Because I've spent 23 years in these towers, it's time to see what the view looks like from the ground. That afternoon, I attended the meeting with Silverstone Financial, not as a participant but as an observer. Rebecca had arranged for me to watch from an adjacent conference room via video link. Marcus looked haggard. Flanked by a phalanx of lawyers and financial advisors, the Silverstone team was merciless in their efficiency. "Mr. Whitfield, you have $200 million in personal guarantees that are now immediately due and payable. Our assessment of your assets shows a current liquid value of approximately $80 million, including securities. Your real estate holdings, while substantial, would take time to liquidate in an orderly fashion." "The market is down," Marcus protested. "If you force a fire sale—" "That's not our concern. You signed these guarantees. You pledged these assets. The triggering event has occurred." One of Marcus's lawyers leaned forward. "We're prepared to offer the real estate portfolio as immediate collateral while we arrange for orderly sales." "Unacceptable. We need cash or equivalents." However, the lead banker paused dramatically. "There might be another option." Marcus leaned forward desperately. "What option?" "Vertex Capital could assume the guarantee in exchange for certain considerations." "What considerations?" "Your complete divestiture of all Vertex holdings, including options and restricted stock, your agreement to a 10-year non-compete, and your cooperation in the forensic audit Ms. Hayes will be conducting." It was brilliant. They were offering him a way out that would strip him of everything related to Vertex while protecting the firm's credit relationships. He would walk away with his houses and some dignity, but nothing more. Marcus's face cycled through emotions: rage, desperation, calculation, and finally, defeat. "I need to discuss this with my counsel. You have 1 hour. After that, we proceed with asset seizure." As the meeting broke up, Rebecca appeared in my viewing room. "They coordinated this with you," I said. It wasn't a question. "Catherine Hayes may have called me for advice on managing the transition. I may have suggested that Silverstone might be amenable to a solution that protected the firm while ensuring Marcus's complete separation." "Elegant. I learned from the best. You built a trap with multiple chambers. Even if he'd escaped the share transfer, the personal guarantees would have caught him. Even if he'd managed those, the forensic audit would have revealed enough to bury him." "I didn't build a trap, Rebecca. I built a mirror. It only reflects what someone brings to it." An hour later, Marcus signed the agreement. In exchange for Vertex assuming his personal guarantee, he surrendered everything: his shares, his options, his board seats on other companies that required Vertex approval. Even his corporate membership at Augusta National. The man who had entered the building that morning as CEO left that evening with nothing but personal assets and a shattered reputation. That night, I finally went home at a reasonable hour. David had cooked dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, but it tasted like freedom. Sarah peppered me with questions about the day, fascinated by the mechanics of corporate warfare. "So, you really planned this for 15 years?" she asked. "I prepared for it. There's a difference. It's like insurance, you hope never to use it. But you're grateful it's there when disaster strikes. But you knew Dad, Marcus would eventually do something like this." David and I exchanged glances. Sarah had caught herself before saying what we all knew she'd been thinking, that Marcus had been like a father figure to me once, a mentor who'd shaped my career before betraying everything mentoring should mean. "People tell you who they are," I said carefully, "through their actions, their choices, what they do when they think no one's watching. Marcus told me who he was many times. I just made sure I was listening." And page 47 was my way of making sure that if he ever stopped listening to his better angels, there would be consequences. Later, as David and I sat on our terrace overlooking the park, he asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Any regrets?" I thought about it carefully. I regret that it came to this. I regret that Marcus chose greed over loyalty, expedience over honor, but I don't regret protecting myself and others like me. The financial news is calling you the most dangerous woman on Wall Street. Good. Maybe the next CEO will think twice before stealing from their employees. My phone buzzed with a message from Catherine Hayes. "Forensic audit preliminary results. It's worse than we thought. Marcus diverted $73 million from pension funds over 5 years, all hidden in complex derivatives. Your risk models found it in 6 hours. I showed David the message. He whistled low. "What will happen to him?" "That's for the SEC and Justice Department to decide. I've done my part." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle below. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably huddled with his criminal defense lawyers, realizing that losing his fortune was the least of his problems. The SEC copying on that original email hadn't been an accident. Someone in compliance had been building a case, waiting for the right moment to strike. My phone rang, an unknown number with a 202 area code. Washington, D.C. "Ms. Morgan, this is Deputy Director Harrison from the SEC's Division of Enforcement. We'd like to thank you for your cooperation in the Vertex Capital matter. Your documentation has been invaluable." "I wasn't aware I was cooperating with anything," he chuckled. "Let's say your actions today made our job significantly easier. We've been investigating certain irregularities for months, but we needed someone inside to shake the tree." "And did anything fall out?" "Oh yes, quite a bit. We'll be in touch about formal testimony, but I wanted you to know that your pension isn't the only one being restored. Our initial review suggests hundreds of employees were affected by similar schemes." After I hung up, David refilled our wine glasses. "You knew about the SEC investigation." "I suspected. When they were copied on that email, it confirmed it. Someone wanted me to act." "So you were a catalyst." "I was a woman who wanted her pension. Everything else was just consequences." The next morning, Friday, dawned clear and bright. I dressed in jeans and a comfortable sweater clothes I hadn't worn on a weekday in 23 years. My Vertex keycard lay on the dresser. Unnecessary now. The financial news was in overdrive. Vertex Capital CEO ousted in hostile takeover. Pension scandal rocks Wall Street. The page 47 revolution. How one woman brought down a giant. My favorite was from the Financial Times. The patience of Isabella Morgan, a case study in long-term risk management. I was finishing breakfast when Sarah appeared, already dressed for school. "You're not going to the office?" "No, Catherine has things well in hand." "So what are you going to do?" It was a good question. For the first time in decades, I had no meetings, no crisis to manage, no models to build. I thought I might read a book, take a walk, maybe have lunch with your father. Sarah hugged me impulsively. "I'm proud of you, Mom. Not for the revenge stuff, though, that was pretty epic, but for knowing when to walk away." After she left for school, I sat at my kitchen table, the morning sun streaming through the windows. My laptop was closed, my phone silent. The war was over. Then the phone rang. "Rebecca. Sorry to disturb your retirement, But you need to hear this. Marcus's lawyers are already shopping a book deal. The Page 47 Conspiracy. How I was betrayed by a trusted colleague. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in days. Let him write it. Let him tell the world how he signed documents without reading them, how he stole from his employees, how he pledged his assets without understanding the risks. It will be a masterclass in what not to do. You're not concerned. Rebecca, he can write whatever he wants. The facts are documented. The SEC has their evidence. The forensic audit speaks for itself. His book will be fiction shelved in the business section. Speaking of books, I've had 3 publishers call this morning. They want your story. Maybe someday. Right now. I have more important things to do. Like what? Like learning how to be retired at 42. It's a risk I've never managed before. That afternoon, I met David for lunch at a small Italian restaurant near his hospital. No power lunches, no strategy sessions, just a husband and wife sharing a meal in the middle of a workday. The strangest thing happened, he said over dessert. I got a call from the hospital board. They want to know if you'd consider joining. Apparently, someone who can execute a 15-year strategic plan is exactly what they need. Let me guess, Elena Rodriguez is on that board. She might have mentioned your name. I considered it. Healthcare was different from finance, but risk was risk, and governance was governance. Tell them I'll think about it, but not for 6 months. I need to remember who I am when I'm not fighting for survival. That evening, Catherine Hayes called with an update. The forensic audit had uncovered a web of financial manipulation that went far beyond pension theft. Marcus had been using employee retirement funds as his personal piggy bank, borrowing from them to cover trading losses, then using bonuses to paper over the gaps. We're going to make everyone whole, she assured me. Every penny stolen, every benefit cut, every pension terminated. It will take time, but we'll do it. And the culture. That will take longer, but I've already announced that executive bonuses will be capped at 20 times the lowest full-time salary. You should have seen their faces. Let me guess, shock and horror. Gerald Thornton actually said it was socialism. I told him it was mathematics. If we can't afford to pay our janitors a living wage, we can't afford to pay executives tens of millions. After we hung up, I walked to my home office and opened the filing cabinet where I kept my most important documents. The original Amendment 7 sat in its folder. Page 47 still pristine after all these years. I thought about shredding it, this document that had changed everything, but instead, I placed it back in the folder. Someday, Sarah might need to understand that the best time to negotiate is when the other party thinks they hold all the cards. A week later, Vertex Capital's stock had stabilized. The market, it turned out, preferred ethical leadership to charismatic theft. Catherine's reforms were being hailed as a model for the industry, and applications from top talent were flooding in. Marcus had disappeared from public view. His lawyers negotiating frantically with the SEC, the Justice Department, and a dozen civil litigants. The Hamptons house was already on the market. I received a thick envelope with no return address. Inside, a handwritten letter on Marcus's personal stationery. Isabella, by the time you read this, I'll have signed my plea agreement. 5 to 7 years. They tell me, if I cooperate fully, my lawyers say I'm lucky the evidence you preserved could have put me away for 20. I want to hate you. For weeks. I've tried. But sitting here in my empty office, packing up the remnants of my career, I can only hate myself. You were right, I signed every page. I just never thought those signatures would matter. You asked me once, years ago, why I didn't promote you to the executive committee despite your performance. I told you it wasn't the right time. The truth was simpler and uglier, I was afraid. Afraid that if you had real power, you'd be better at this than me. I was right to be afraid. I know apologizing is meaningless now, but I need to say it anyway. I'm sorry for betraying your trust, for stealing what you'd earned, for assuming you'd accept it quietly. Most of all, I'm sorry for teaching you that power without conscience is worthless, and then forgetting that lesson myself. By the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not dramatically, just to a minimum security facility in Pennsylvania, where I'll have years to think about page 47. Take care of Vertex. It deserves better than what I gave it. Marcus. I read the letter twice, then filed it away. Not out of sentiment, but as a reminder that even the mighty can fall when they forget that every action has consequences. That evening, we had a family dinner to celebrate Sarah's acceptance to Columbia University's early admission program. She wanted to study law, inspired, she said, by watching contracts become weapons and shields. Promise me something, I said as we toasted her future. Promise me you'll always read every page. She grinned. Especially page 47. Especially page 47. 6 months passed. I joined the hospital board, finding unexpected satisfaction in applying risk management to healthcare. The challenges were different, but the principles the same: protect the vulnerable, plan for contingencies, and always read the fine print. Vertex Capital thrived under Catherine's leadership. The stock price reached record highs. Employee satisfaction soared, and the firm became a case study in ethical corporate governance. The Morgan Clause, as financial journalists had dubbed it, was being added to contracts across the industry, protection for employees against arbitrary termination of earned benefits. On a crisp October morning, I received a call from the Southern District of New York. Marcus had been sentenced to 6 years, with possibility of parole in 4. His cooperation had exposed a network of similar schemes across 3 other firms. Your documentation was crucial, the prosecutor told me. Without it, we might never have uncovered the full extent of the fraud. I'm glad it helped. Ms. Morgan, can I ask you something off the record? Of course. How did you know to document everything so meticulously? Most people don't think that far ahead. I thought about how to answer. The truth was complex, part paranoia, part preparation, part pure instinct honed by years of watching powerful men bend rules until they broke. I grew up poor, I said finally. When you've seen your parents lose everything to someone else's greed, you learn to build your own safety nets. Page 47 was just another kind of insurance. That afternoon, I sat in my favorite coffee shop, watching the city rush by outside. My phone buzzed with a message from Elena Rodriguez. Board meeting next week. Catherine's proposing to enshrine the pension protections in the corporate charter. Permanent protection, your legacy. I smiled and typed back. Not my legacy, our legacy. For everyone who comes after. A young woman at the next table was studying what looked like a contract, marking it up with a yellow highlighter. She looked tired, stressed. Probably an associate at some firm working billable hours that would grind her down to nothing. Excuse me, I said. She looked up, startled. Make sure you read every page, especially the ones they tell you are just boilerplate. She nodded, confused but polite. As I left, I heard her flip to the back of the document, checking pages she'd probably skipped before. One small action, one person protected. It wasn't much, but it was something. Walking home through Central Park, I thought about the path that had led me here. 23 years of building someone else's empire. 15 years of carrying a secret weapon I'd hoped never to use. 6 months of freedom I was still learning to embrace. My phone rang. Sarah. Mom, I'm writing a paper on corporate governance. Can I interview you about the Vertex situation? Of course. What's your thesis? That the most effective corporate reforms come not from regulation, but from individuals willing to enforce existing rules that powerful people assume don't apply to them. That's very specific. Professor says specificity is the key to good legal writing. Also, he wants to know if you'd guest lecture next month. On what topic? The power of page 47's strategic documentation in corporate law. I laughed. Tell him I'll think about it. But I already knew I'd say yes. Because if my story could teach even one future lawyer to protect the vulnerable, to plan for betrayal, to insist on consequences for those who thought themselves above them, then page 47 would have served its ultimate purpose. That night, I found David in his study, reviewing patient files. I kissed the top of his head. grateful for his steadiness through all the chaos. "Any regrets?" he asked, echoing his question from months ago. "No," I said, and meant it. No regrets. Outside, New York glittered in the darkness, indifferent to the small dramas playing out in its towers. Somewhere, a young analyst was working late, deferring compensation for future security. Somewhere, an executive was contemplating a breach of trust that seemed expedient. Somewhere, a contract was being signed without being read. And somewhere, if I'd done my job right, someone was reading every page, especially page 47, building their own protection against a world that too often rewards those who take from those who create. The war was over. I'd won, but more importantly, I'd survived with my integrity intact, my family whole, and my future finally, truly, my own. In the end, that was worth more than any pension, any revenge, any amount of money. It was worth everything. As I climbed into bed that night, David already asleep beside me, I thought about Marcus in his cell, probably lying awake thinking about signatures and consequences. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only a quiet relief that justice, for once, had been served. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new pages to read and write. But tonight, I slept the deep sleep of someone who had fought the dragon and won. Not with a sword, but with a pen. Not with violence, but with patience. Not with rage, but with the quiet certainty that every action has consequences, and every signature tells a story. And on page 47 of that story, sometimes, the dragon loses.